This is Patrick Roth, Senior Support Technician for E1 Business Solutions. Today we're going to look at smartconnect.com and something I've run into a few times, um, in that if my data isn't normalized, um, sometimes my output is a little unexpected. So let me show you. So in this particular set, with this simple bit of data here, I have two rows of data, four columns, my customer as the ID field, and then columns month 1, 2, and 3. Now, if we notice that half of the columns, one of each, is actually blank. And so for this contrived scenario, the thought is that I would do whatever I need to do with this data, but um, the destination is expecting a zero, not a blank. And so by actually having blanks and mixed integers and or numerics, it actually causes a little bit of problem Smart Connect reading it. So in this case, the columns are all defined as character data to make sure that all the fields are red. But again, the problem is I can see blanks, and in my destination, if I try to calculate values with blank data, I might get errors about can't convert data to zero, string to data errors, or the destination will fail because I'm passing in blanks and not zero. So I need to write some kind of calculation in order to handle that. It's a little bit easier with on-prem using the .NET libraries, but there are several different ways that we can handle this from a Smart Connect integration. So in this particular integration, it's a simple source file text, and we're going to write to a dummy file text so that we can read the data real easy. And we'll notice include headings, overwrite file, and then it's just going to straight file. Now, if we go to the integration, again, it's just going there. So what we're going to want to do is take a look at our calculated fields. So I put three methods here that all work. Some are simpler than the others, some are niftier than others, but we'll go through them all. This first one, we're going to calculate the column value in month 1. Again, one's blank and one is not. So we always start by declaring a variable. Technically, we don't have to declare a variable, but since we can either be 0 or 1, or the value of the column, we're going to check it. So we're going to declare a variable, just called M1. We'll initialize it to 0, and then in our condition that we're going to look at, we'll either set the value or we won't set the value, and it'll be the default. So when this return M1 happen, it'll be 0 or the value. So JavaScript has a built-in function called isNaN, which stands for is not a number. So in this case, we want it to be a number. So actually, we want to look for not is not a number. So that's why we use this. So we're going to check the inverse of that. So is not a number is false. So in this case, we're going to call the parse float function, and this is going to return back either not a number. We don't see that, but it's returned actually literal not a number. NaN is the value that's coming back. And if it's successful, well, then this will be false, and then this will make it true with the not symbol. And it'll jump in here, and then we'll parse the data back out of the field into M1 and then return M1. If it returns not a number, then, oh, this is not a number, then we'll just skip out of this if check. And we'll return M1, which again we declared as 0. So let's look at the second one. And this one's kind of nifty. Again, it's one of the more simpler ones, but it uses this OR function. So in this case, we do declare a variable. We wouldn't have to. We could just return this contents right back here. Old habits, I guess, of old programmers. And so I always declare the variable. And if I would need to debug it, I would be able to set it to something so I'd be able to see how my function was working. So in this case, we're still going to declare a variable. And this time, we're going to use the parse floats function once again, but we're going to parse this month 2 value, or that's what the double straight lines are, or 0. So if this fails, which returns not a number, then it just goes, oh, parse float 0 makes this 0. So this is why we don't have to initialize it as 1. I could have made the code consistent and said var m2 equals 0 and then m2 equals parse float. But since there's no if condition around this, just makes sense to just do it all in one. So if this turns out to be a value, it'll return the value, and then it'll just ignore the or 0. If this turns out to be not a number, meaning invalid, then it'll say, oh, or maybe you parse 0. And then so parse 0, of course, fit works. And then we got M2 returned. And then lastly, just the good old if-then trick, essentially, except it's not then in JavaScript, of course. Declare a variable M3. In this case, check to see if month 3 is a value. Now, in this case, there is no value in it, so it'll be an empty string in the data. It's not impossible that depending on what I put in for the data, this could be multiple spaces, so it could be empty spaces. So in order to make sure there's no empty spaces on that, we're going to use the trim function. So this dot month 3 dot trim value, which remove the spaces. So if there was a bunch of blanks, if it was 1, 2, 3 blank blank blank, or if it was just 5 blanks, this would remove all the blanks. And then we use the inequality, which in JavaScript is the exclamation point equal, and then quote quote single quotes like SQL would use. Could use double quotes here. Single quotes is easier to read to me. And so we notice that it's an empty string, not a string with spaces, which again couldn't have due to this. So if it's not an empty string, then it must be a value, and parse float 1, 3. Now, of course, if I had ABC in this would also puke with M3 would be not a number, and this would all fail. But our assumption is in our base data that it'll either have a value in it, or it will have a blank, which we then have to convert to 0. And so that does the same thing. So if we look at it, this is our third method to do it. And the rest, there's all various iterations of it, but they're all come down to pretty much these 3 ideas. And so if we look at a target integration, then we're just going to put our customer in so you can see it, and then we're going to put in calc month 1, 2, 3 for our 3 calculated fields right on the map. And go to data. Got it. Oh, there we go. Let's open it up. And if we look at CSV output, and we look at Indeed, actually that's not a good way to do it because you never know what Excel might do. Let's actually copy it to here. And it did look good in Excel. And again, it looks the same here. So we see our 3 fields with the columns, and then we have zeros and 0 and 0. So using the 3 different methods, they all did produce the same results with this data set, returning the zeros where there was blanks and returning the actual data where there was actual data. So this is 3 different ways to accomplish this task in smartconnect.com.